In the first video I presented an introduction to the urban calculus and the systems model that it used, and then in the second video I showed you how to play the basic game. This third video describes TUC Evolved, a variation of TUC which uses capability cards for strategic actions. The capability cards, examples of which are shown here, consist of the following elements. First of all, the title of the card, then the cost of the card in terms of strategic capability cubes. Some cards then have an additional cost in terms of fires cubes. Then the card that you need to draw from the playing card deck in order to succeed at the action. This replaces the numbers that used to be in the circles. Then a reminder as to which linkage this refers to, in this case N, so the link here to societal support, enemy societal support, and then the same thing in plain text. Then a description of what this action represents in real world terms, and then a description of the impact of the card in game terms, both in terms of if it's successful and also if it fails. I provide two decks of about 30 cards as part of the print and play package. The Game Master should select a deck of about 15 to 20 cards from those for each side, biased to reflect the scenario. The scenario might even tell you which ones to use, and there's certainly no intention that both sides should have identical decks. Once you've made the deck selection, shuffle the decks for each player, and then the game can start. At the start of each turn, you need to draw a number of cards from the deck that brings your total cards holding up to 2 plus the number of cubes you have. So in this case I've got 5 cubes, plus 2 is 7, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get 7 cards. So let's just deal out 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This should ideally be done secretly so that each side doesn't know what the other side has, but because there's actually a little interplay between the two sides, that doesn't really matter too much. For each of the cards, I've then got 4 main options. The first thing I can do is I can actually burn a card. And what that means is I basically get rid of it from the game. It's not going to appear again in the game, so it's a capability that I just think I'll never use in the course of the game itself. The second thing I can do is to discard the card, in which case it goes back onto a discard pile, and then once the main deck is exhausted, you then shuffle the discard pile, and then potentially that card comes back into play on a later turn. The third thing I can do is actually hold on to a card in my hand and keep it till next turn. What that does mean is that I will draw 1 less card when I draw the cards at the beginning of the turn to bring my hand up to 2 plus the number of cubes. And then the final thing I can do is actually play one of the cards. The way we play a card is by actually paying basic cost in terms of cubes. So for instance, this card has a 1 cube cost. This card over here we can see has a 2 cube cost. And as we showed in some of the example cards at the very beginning, for some of the cards I need to use the fires cubes. So in this case, let's have a look at what I'm going to do. I've got 5 cubes in my budget. I quite like the idea about urban ISR, so as to get my +1 on the battleground, so I'm going to allocate at least 1 of my cubes to that. I quite also like the idea of attacking the enemy's adverse global opinion, so I'll assign a cube to that. Attacking government will directly might be quite interesting to do. I've got 2 cubes left, so I could either put 2 against a botnet so as to attack global opinion further. I could put 2 against a cyber attack so as to get the -1 on enemy combat. Or I could split it between warning civilians so as to reduce the number of civilian casualties I create, and trying to attack the enemy's strategic capability. And I think that that's the option that I'm going to go for. Once you've made your selection from the cards, any cards you haven't used go into the discard pile. And then if we're playing the game for real, what you typically do is you lay these cards down, face down, with their cube on top of them, so the enemy can see the number of cards you're playing, and the cubes are there so as to pay the cost for each cube. Once you've got to that state, you've then got 2 options. You could either actually just play it alternately card by card between red and blue, or you could just play all the red cards and then all the blue cards. What I'll do in this case is just play through each of these red cards just so you can see how the mechanics work. So I get my deck of cards just as I do in a normal game. Let's start off with this one. So this is attacking enemy global opinion. So I want to try and put a cube on global adverse opinion. It's got a cost of 9+, so draw a card, 10+, that's been successful. So just as within the ordinary game, I then place a cube on enemy global adverse opinion, remembering to put it in the dashed area so we can take account of it in the reverberating effects at the end of the game. Just take the cube off that to remind myself that I've done it. Next thing I want to do is evacuate and warn civilians. So basically, if I'm successful at this, then it means I can reduce the civilian casualties that occur during the battleground. I need a 9+ to succeed. I've got an 8, so that's failed. Then sanctions, 9+ to succeed at this. Succeed again, so that's good. And so that removes one of the enemy's government will cubes. Next one, support enhanced urban ISR. Unfortunately, I've rolled a 1 on that, so I actually lose the cube permanently from the game. So whatever assets this was reflecting in terms of EW, UAVs, etc., it means actually they've been compromised and possibly taken out by the enemy. They're not going to be available for the rest of the game. And the final one is trying to attack the enemy's strategic capability, so trying to remove the enemy's cubes, and a 2 on that. That's failed. I only lose in this card if I draw a 1. There are some cards where actually you lose a cube on a 1 or a 2. And so that's the end of that phase for me, and all those cards will then go back into the discard deck or discard pile, ready to be used on the following turn. And that's really it. It's a relatively simple addition to playing TUC. Hopefully though, what it does is it gives players a better understanding of what those strategic actions might represent in the real world, and a bit more of a reason as to why they're choosing which action, other than just sort of what the scores are for success. By all means, feel free to create your own cards for different scenarios, and again I can include some blanks in the print and play set. And remember, there is no need for the attacker and defender decks to be the same, and in fact they almost certainly shouldn't be. As ever, the full rules for TUC and TUC Evolved are on my wiki, link in the notes, and I'll add an FAQ page as I get questions. If you do have any questions or feedback on the game, then please do reach out to me at david@burden.name. Again, email address in the notes. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy the game.